Every dictator of Pakistan, every political government of Pakistan, they are all responsible for this. None of the governments ever went for long-term policies. Friends, India today is moving in a direction where we cannot afford to make any major mistakes. Because just the way China rose from a poor nation to a superpower, India is also trying to rise with the same speed. The country continues to be the fastest growing large economy. Many of the world's investment banks have identified India as a prime investment destination right now. Google has announced its first AI hub in India and will be investing $15 billion in the next 5 years. Apple is doubling. Amazon is investing billions in Maharashtra and Telangana, and Microsoft is investing billions for the first time in its history. India today finally has a shot at becoming one of the most powerful and influential economies on the planet. If you look at this chart, it took us 60 years to reach $1 trillion GDP. Then it took only 7 years to go from $1 to $2 trillion, and just 5 years to reach $3 trillion. And now we have picked up such speed that every 2 years we are expected to add $1 trillion to our GDP. But friends, while India is growing so fast, the story of our neighbor Pakistan has become a harsh warning. Pakistan is in trouble, growing debt crisis, falling forex reserves, inflation so high that people are struggling to pay their bills, and everything becoming unaffordable. None of the governments there ever started long-term projects that could benefit Pakistan's economy or its revenue generation. Today, Pakistan is drowning in a severe energy crisis, and that too because of a mistake that our own politicians can also make. That is why it is extremely important that India does not repeat these mistakes during its golden phase of growth. Because the truth is, politicians of both countries somewhere play the same game. Freebies are given for votes, dreams are sold during elections, and when it comes to long-term policy, politicians think more about their own chair than the nation. In India, the new election trend is promising cash to voters. The total amount promised for schemes meant for unemployed youth, elderly citizens, and women is said to be around 300 crore. You may call it freebies, political shops, or Ravdi, but freebies have been reigning in Bihar. Direct cash transfers to women have become the new trend across Indian states. And this is exactly the mistake Pakistan made, because of which today the situation is so bad that people's electricity bills are higher than their rent. Without electricity, the entire country is drowning in debt and there are no signs of growth. Right now, Pakistan is dying without energy. Much of Pakistan's population of nearly 230 million people has plunged into darkness. Cities, including Karachi, Islamabad, and Lahore, are without power as the country can no longer afford to buy coal or natural gas. Falling foreign exchange reserves, double-digit inflation, dangerously high national debt, and a devaluation of the rupee have all crushed the power sector. And the most disturbing fact, Pakistan's politicians and businessmen have made so much money that you cannot even imagine, while a common citizen doesn't have money even for food. In fact, inflation in Pakistan touched 30% in 2023 and 12% in 2024. Can you believe that? And all this started with one stupid political mistake. A mistake that Indian politicians can also repeat. So what were those mistakes that pushed Pakistan into today's massive energy crisis? What did Pakistan's politicians do wrong? And what can India's politicians learn from these mistakes? This story begins in 1947. Pakistan gained independence but completely ignored electricity. The British left so little power capacity for Pakistan that even a small state like Goa could not run on it. In 1947, India had 1,362 MW capacity, while Pakistan had only 60 MW. Pakistan realized that without electricity, industrialization, factory operations, and city expansion would be impossible. So, by 1955, Pakistan installed 200 MW of new power capacity, but as industrialization and population grew, by 1970, the entire system began breaking down. In the next 10 years, per capita electricity demand increased by 108%, and load shedding and blackouts started across the country. When the system collapsed, Pakistan again went to the IMF and World Bank, but this time the IMF put a condition. They told Pakistan to allow private and international players to build power plants, because the government alone could not do the job. Pakistan agreed, and in 1994 launched a power policy that eventually destroyed the entire country. This policy shows how corruption can destroy a nation. Pakistan made two major blunders. The first mistake was take-or-pay contracts. When the policy launched, big businesses feared losing money, so politicians promised guaranteed profits. Contracts were written stating that if a company built a 1,000 MW plant, the government would pay for the full 1,000 MW, even if Pakistan consumed only 500 MW. Meaning even if half the power was unused, the government still paid in full. And in 2024-25, the government pays 8 trillion Pakistani rupees, around $8 billion every year to plants that don't produce even a single unit of electricity. That is thousands of crores in Indian rupees paid to plants that don't work at all. What else can you call this except foolishness? The second mistake was promising payments in US dollars. Instead of reducing taxes or improving ease of doing business, Pakistani politicians told foreign investors that payments would be made not in Pakistani rupees but in US dollars. This was foolish because Pakistan had no control over the value of the dollar. If geopolitical conflict happened, the dollar would rise. If economic crisis hit, the dollar would rise. If the local currency underperformed, the dollar would rise. And exactly that happened. In 1994, $1 was equal to 30 Pakistani rupees. Today, $1 is nearly 280 Pakistani rupees. So a bill of $10 million that earlier required 30 crore rupees now requires 280 crore rupees. In just 13 years, Pakistan has lost $17 billion due to these contracts. On top of this, Pakistan's political system remained so unstable that not a single prime minister in its history has completed a full term. Every prime minister has either been overthrown or murdered. The army has almost always been the primary player behind the scenes. When the government itself is unstable, long-term policies cannot be formed. Every politician fears being removed. So to keep people happy, they keep distributing subsidies, just like India's Ravdi culture. And these subsidies increased the government's debt. The government kept giving subsidies it could never repay. When no option was left, China entered the picture in 2013. China announced the CPEC project, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, worth $46 billion. China promised to build roads, ports, highways, airports, and power plants. Everyone thought Pakistan's fate would change. But China is China. Pakistan was actually walking into a trap. China imposed 3 deadly conditions. First, instead of a 3% interest rate, China gave loans at 5-6%. Second, all the money from these loans had to be spent only on Chinese companies, meaning no Pakistani companies got contracts and no Pakistani workers got jobs. China gave money to its own companies but charged Pakistan interest, double the normal rate. Lastly, China said if Pakistan failed to pay EMI on time, the interest would increase further. Today, Pakistan's debt has grown so much that while its GDP is only $30 billion, Chinese loans alone are $30 billion. And 60% of Pakistan's total revenue goes into paying interest. Nothing remains for development or welfare. When Pakistan went to the IMF forced the government to remove all subsidies, and suddenly prices of essentials like wheat flour and milk shot up by 40–50%. Pakistan is facing its worst crisis since birth: rising foreign debt, inflation, and falling forex reserves. People cannot afford even basic food. Long story short, because of short-term politics and corruption, governments kept distributing freebies, became poorer, industries did not come, jobs were not created, and when the Russia-Ukraine war happened, inflation and currency depreciation increased debt even further. That is how Pakistan got trapped in China's debt. China has similarly trapped Sri Lanka, Laos, Djibouti, Zambia, and many other nations, and Pakistan is now one of them. This is the impact of Pakistan's mistakes. A nation once ahead of India is now far behind, only able to watch India's growth from a distance. But this story is not just Pakistan's story. It is a warning for India, because if we misuse our resources, if we put politics above economics, then our future may also look similar. From this story, we learn 3 important lessons. Lesson 1. A country becomes strong when politicians put long-term policy above short-term politics. Whether it is BJP or Congress, good policies must continue, and bad ones must be discontinued. Lesson 2. A country does not run on freebies, but on a healthy economic system. When a politician offers freebies, understand he is working for his power, not for the country. And lastly, self-reliance Atmanirbharta is not just a slogan, it is a survival strategy. Our own infrastructure, manufacturing, and technology can make us crisis-proof, so when a politician talks about technology, listen. When a politician talks about distributing freebies, please do not vote for them, because your vote decides the future of the country.